So anything that happens in the GERD would immediately reflect into Ethiopia. So let's take the column, the 145 meters deep column of water. As we know, oxygenation is always through photosynthesis. The top 20 meters, that's where the phytoplankton is. That's where the primary productivity is. So the 120 meters below that would be devoid of oxygen. This is very serious. They will export anoxic water with no oxygen at all. What will happen to the biodiversity in the Blue Nile in the Sudan? Nobody really knows. Could the river adjust? Could the purifying capacity work? Or would it be the loss of all biodiversity in the reserves and consequently the 700 kilometers to Khartoum? This is very serious. They talk about giving us silt-free water. Water has to carry something. So the silt-free water would be so light, it will scour the bottom of the river, the bottom of irrigation canals, and they would make bank erosion. We do have a problem of bank erosion in the northern provinces, so this will intensify. Many cycles, natural cycles, depend on the regular annual flood, like fish. Fish productivity is synchronized with the annual flood. So fish store fat, produce eggs, and then spawn in the floodplains. There will be no floodplains because they will give us 130 million cubic meters of water for 9 months. There will be no flood. So what will happen to the fish, which would migrate upstream, which would migrate sideways into the floodplains? This should also be studied. Then the floodplains themselves get submerged each year, and then when the water recedes, we have what we call recession irrigation, floodplain irrigation, or agriculture. This will lose. We'll have to pump water up. We'll have to use fertilizers to compensate for the loss of fertility due to the loss of silt. The largest agricultural project maybe in the world under one administration, the Jazeera, which is 1.2 million, or is it, sorry, it's 2.2 million faddans or acres. This has been planted for the last 100 years, last century. It's still fertile because of the silt, the annual silt. Then you have the red brick production. How many billion bricks do produce each year? This will also be lost. So who is going to compensate for this loss? Sudanese irrigation people don't even talk about it. Conference on dams on the Nile in 2008 in Khartoum, and we came out with the Khartoum statement, we call it. The affected people should always be consulted and be compensated. Nobody talks about the dam affected people. In the area of Bani Shangol, which is reputedly Sudanese, or at the area up to Dungul and Wadi Halfa, downstream. All that would be affected because the effect of the dam does not stay there, it's transmitted downstream. So nobody talks about people.
How is it? How people downstream will be affected?
One, because of the floodplain. Two, because of the would-be use of fertilizers, use of petrol, and probable diseases. And then the bank erosion and the scarring of the bottom of the dams. And the loss of fish and loss of biodiversity. These are all effects that should be studied. There is no study, a single study on the impact of the GERD on the environment or on the social environment.
The livelihoods.
And the livelihoods,
especially the livelihoods.
This we have been calling for. Well, recently the Ministry of Irrigation at last talked to the Institute of Environmental Studies of the University of Khartoum, asking the institute to look into the studies. It's a bit too late, but better than never. And the institute gave their proposal, the technical proposal and financial proposal. We never received an answer yet. I don't know whether it's going to be on board. Climate change is uncertain. We know that extremes are going to increase. Arid places would be more arid, flooded places would be more. But there's no certainty that nobody can point out. But I started saying that the flow of the Nile is not unidirectional. The Nile is winding, and when the curve, it takes silt from here and puts it there. Islands are always changing. So if you put a village or a city for 100 years in one place, that doesn't mean it will remain forever. It has to be going through the experience of erosion and deposition. So flooding is a most natural sequence in the Nile hydrology. Really. Even as I said, Tuti, as you see, this side is growing and the other side is deepening. If you go downstream a little bit at Beit el-Mal, this whole island is new. It's less than 15 years. Floods have always been there. Everything is related to floods. Water quality, water chemistry, the plankton, the primary productivity, secondary fish, all biodiversity is geared to the water quality, and water quality, the most important factor is the flood, because of volume, velocity, and content. The flood brings silt, it changes water chemistry. So as I said, just like birds migrating from Europe in the winter, the flood is that big an influence, just like the winter in Europe. Even the fish store up fat because they know they will not be able to eat with the high silt content, and they breed in the flood season, in the floodplains. So, but as I said, nobody really knows. There has not been enough studies to see the impact of the climate change. As a matter of fact, somebody thinks that the discharge of the Nile, the annual volume of discharge of the Nile will increase because rains will increase in Ethiopia. So it's not so certain. But everything, the agriculture, man's activities, also are affected by the flood.